Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Health in Islam. As always, I'm Ismail Chartier, and again, we are very fortunate and very happy to welcome our dear friend, Dr. Yasser, back to us, our resident psychiatrist. He examines me on a daily basis, I think. But today we're going to talk about substance abuse. Huge topic again. As always, whenever we have Dr. Yasser, we try to power pack the episodes. Thank you for coming, Dr. Yasser.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. We're going to jump in, as always, and get our feet wet, jump right into the deep end of the pool here and get going. Drug and alcohol addiction are increasing in our society, especially among our youth. Why is it such a large problem?
Drug and alcohol. If we're going to talk about drug and alcohol, we can actually talk about it for a long, long time. It's not
this
only...
is good. We have 26 minutes. We have a whole episode here to film.
It's not only an individual problem. It's actually a family problem, a familial problem, and also a societal problem. Usually, our children or the children begin on drugs and alcohol at an early age. They start dipping and dabbling with it at the age of 9, maybe 11, and then by the time it comes up to the open, they're in their 20s or 30s, or it's however long they can hide it from everybody else. Drugs and alcohol is a disease, and it's just not only as strong as any other disease, but I think it is stronger than any other disease because it's a biopsychosocial disease. That means it attacks biologically, psychologically, and socially. All aspects of the human life is attacked. In that disease, you have pre-addiction and post-addiction. The pre-addiction phase, when you don't know that you have this disease, just like diabetes, for instance. If you develop it and you don't know you have it, and then you get the first attack, and then you say, well, okay, now I know, now I have this disease. Now I have to live on a certain diet and take insulin, or maybe not, or, the proper treatment for it. Drug and alcohol is the same way. The disease of addiction is the same way.
You have to, initially, you have to realize you have the problem.
Well, the best way to deal with it is not use at all. So you don't know if you have it or not, because if you never used, you don't know. You'll never know. If it happens and you use, and this usually happens in teenage years, because it's a camaraderie thing, it's a peer pressures and all of this stuff. So you end up drinking or using with the other friends. What happens is that it could be a group of friends. Some of them use and they never use again. Some of them use and they get hooked on it.
No, they keep using it for the rest of their lives.
Yes, or until they get treatment. And those are the people that have this disease. This disease doesn't have a cure. However, it has treatment.
So once you're an addict, once you're addicted, you're always addicted.
You're always addicted to it. Since it doesn't have a cure, but it has treatment for it. If you don't get the treatment for the drug and alcohol, there is only 3 ends to it. Either jail, or mental institutions, or death. One of the 3.
So pick your poison.
So it's basically, it's a terminal disease.
What is your working definition of addiction? Like when you meet people and you start to counsel them with addiction, what is your definition of this? How do you know they're an addict? Was that when they tell you?
So a lot of them come and they want to be treated because they went to the end of the line. A lot of them come because they have to come.
It's court-ordered or
court-ordered, or work told them, well, if you don't go and do this, you're going to lose your job, or their family told them, if you don't go and do this, we're going to leave you, or, so it varies from one to the other. However, it's a disease, and since 1953, it's been declared by the FDA that it is a disease. The definition of the disease is that which interferes with the daily function of an organism. It could be external or internal or a combination of the two. Okay. The diagnosis of this disease is that your life becomes out of control in all aspects. That's the diagnosis of the drug and alcohol addiction.
So like if you're the guy who on his lunch is drinking a 6-pack,
well,
and you go home and you're pounding more and more and more, and that's your whole life revolves around this. So you've spun out of control.
It's basically your life is out of control.
Your life revolves around this addiction now.
You end up with physical symptoms. You end up with emotional symptoms. You end up with legal problems, social problems, health problems. It's all over your body. And when you try to deal with one, the other one pops up. You try to deal with the other one pops up. So your life becomes out of control.
It's just a tailspin.
And that's the definition of this disease.
Now, how do Muslim children, our Muslim youth, how do they end up turning to drugs and alcohol? Is it peer pressure, socioeconomics? What is it that turns them into to this path?
Everybody has his own reasons. But a lot of the children that I've dealt with, or a lot of the people that I've dealt with, they start at an early age. It varies between 9 and 13. And that's, by the way, that's all over the world. That's not just in Egypt or in the States. I think that's the age that you're mostly vulnerable. And
trying to fit in.
Peer pressure. No. Come on, let's do it for fun. Let's do it for fun. That's one reason, one main reason. Another reason is that they think if they smoke or if they do it, or they drink beer or something, that means they're old and they're big and they're men, and you know. Another reason could be an escape from emotional problems. So they take the escape from the emotional problems and they take the escape from the daily pressures of everything. So they escape into the drugs and alcohol. And to do this, we have to really talk about the biological aspect of the disease, the psychological aspect of the disease, and the social aspect of the disease.
That was the question I was going to ask you next. What is the biological aspect of drug and alcohol addiction? What is the biological aspect of it?
Biologically, there are people who are predisposed for this disease.
Your father was an alcoholic, something like this.
Could be, yes. It's hereditary. What we find out is that in the brain, there are certain chemicals that are not being produced in the brain. So for somebody who's normal, who doesn't have this disease and have this chemical in him, he could have a drink or could have whatever of poisons, which is a drug and alcohol. And they don't want to do it anymore. Okay, for somebody who doesn't have these chemicals in his brain, they crave it. That's the way it's being looked upon.
They just go around.
And they crave, they want more of it. Once they find it, they want more of it, and the body wants more of it. Some other people, and some different schools in the treatment, they say, well, it's an allergy to drugs and alcohol, and they develop an allergic reaction to it. So I actually go with the fact that it is predisposition to develop the disease. So if somebody is in your family addicted, or drinking excessively, or doing drugs or something, you will be playing a Russian roulette
to do it yourself.
To do that, because you don't know what might happen.
What happened to you?
That's pre the addiction.
No.
After the addiction, after the use, the biological part becomes brain dysfunction. That's what basically when we start talking about treatment, it's the brain that we treat. Because addiction causes brain dysfunction. In turn, it causes, if you're drinking, it causes esophagus ulcer, stomach ulcers, cirrhosis of the liver, kidney problems. So it cleans everything inside. It really, and it cleans your pockets for money too. I was trying to make light of it. So it causes a lot of medical problems.
Cleans out the stereos in your mom and dad's house.
Yes. It causes a lot of problems. Physically, and not just alcohol, talking about drugs as well. Marijuana causes a lot of problems.
In the West, we kind of almost look at alcoholism as a joke. You know what I mean? Like, you watch The Simpsons and you have Barney the drunk. You know, you watched even Andy Griffith back in the 50s and you had, you know, what was his name? I forget his name, but he'd go and he'd lock himself in the jail when he was on a bender. Otis, that was his name. But we look at it as almost like a funny thing, like, oh, look at the funny drunk guy. You know, when it comes to like crack cocaine and heroin and drugs like this, then we're like, oh, this is really serious. But we don't really understand. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't alcohol like a gateway to these other drugs? Like you first start with alcohol And then you move slowly into these other things. Not everybody, but it's like the first one that people try.
Usually what we say is that smoking is a gateway. Smoking cigarettes is a gateway. Okay, and the rest is just switching your addiction from one to the other, from one to the other, because the problem or the disease of addiction is not in the drug or in the bottle. The disease is in the person,
in the brain.
himself.
No. With that, we're going to go ahead and take a real short break, pay some bills, and we'll be right back to Health in Islam, and we'll let you bat the rest of that question out of the park here in a minute. We'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Health in Islam. As always, I am Ismail Chartier, and we are very fortunate to have Dr. Yasser here with us again, as always. We're a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
We're going to jump right back into it, and we're going to move on to the psychological aspects of addiction. Because you said we've discussed the biological
pre and post.
Pre and post, and now we're going to get into the psychological.
The psychological aspects of addiction. Basically, throughout the development, the lifespan, the development, we're going to go again to I'm going to make it easier, and I say it's first 7 years, second 7 years, third 7 years. Each year of the development, you develop physically, you develop mentally, and emotionally. If there are any problems within the development, emotional development, then you have a loose chain, a loose link, or a missing link. Okay? So basically, the person who has the disease of addiction, he has many missing links in the childhood development, and they grow up to lacking the ability to face life's problem or life's stressors on a daily basis. And that's the emotional piece of it.
So if you had like abandonment issues when you were a child, this might lead further down the road to an addiction problem.
That's true. That's true. Or inadequacy. There are three core issues that basically, if you have one of them, you have the other two. But if you have any problems throughout the development, what happens is that you're not able to face society. So when you're faced with any stressors, external stressors or problems, then you try to run away from them. And you run away from them to what's the quickest way? Drugs and alcohol. It's like magic.
To a pill.
When you get this magic feeling that now I'm okay, everything is gone, then you're hooked. That's the psychological addiction. Okay. Once you're psychologically addicted to some kind of drugs or alcohol, then you're going to do more and more and more, and the physical addiction begins and increase.
I heard with, this is kind of off topic, but with cigarettes, because I believe they're a drug. With cigarettes, the psychological addiction of cigarettes is twice as much as the physical addiction of cigarettes. Yes. Is this the way with most drugs? The psychological addiction is more, I mean, with heroin, you go through like huge withdrawals.
Yes. Heroin is very hard to get it out of your body. It's not very hard, I'm going to say very difficult, because of the pain and the withdrawal symptoms that you go through. Cigarettes is psychologically addicted more than physically. And it's one of the very difficult addictions that you can treat. And actually, with the cigarettes, you can, if anybody is smoking, they can do this on their own. They just take their pulse before they smoke a cigarette, and then they smoke it, and then take their pulse again. And what happens is that you're going to find your heart rate or your pulse is increased. And what's ironic, it's like an oxymoron, because a lot of people would say, well, let me just smoke a cigarette to calm down.
And you're actually increasing everything.
The heart rate.
So what are the sociological, the social ramifications of addiction, the third part of this triangle, if you will?
Okay.
If you're not done with
No. I just wanted to talk about once they start hiding into the drugs and alcohol, it amplifies the inadequate feeling or the abandonment feeling. It amplifies the problems. It doesn't get rid of the problem.
It makes them worse.
It makes it worse, because when you feel like it's magic, the problem didn't go away. The problem is still there, except you put it aside and you gain more problems, And you added more problems, which is the addiction problems, to the other problems.
When you wake up sober the next morning, you still have these same problems.
Yes, and when you get to face them, you don't want to face them, and you run away into it. So it's like a vicious circle.
Big circle.
And that's why in the East, they usually say, well, the man takes the drink, and then the drink takes the drink, and then the drink takes the man.
Yeah.
That's the end of the cycle.
That's the end of the cycle.
Yes.
And the social ramifications of addiction.
The social ramification, you also have pre and post. The pre-using, which is, come on, let's do it, it's only for fun, and you feel like you want to be part of the group, and you want to do it. So socially, it's okay.
A good time Charlie kind of feeling there.
And then if you take a look at the ads or the TV and everything,
commercials. Yeah.
Socially they make it okay too. I'm talking about drinking.
No.
Socially they make it okay.
It looks like it's a blast. Everyone's having so much fun.
Yeah, if you want to have fun, you have to have this drink. If you want to have fun, you have to this drink and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So socially, we are sold as a society that it is okay, when in fact it's not. And then after or post drinking, then actually socially what you have to do, that if you don't cut your relationship with the people that you used to drink with, or make it known to them that you do not drink and you're in recovery, it will be very difficult for you to recover.
Your shaitan are calling you back to what you used to do kind of thing.
Yes, because if somebody doesn't want to, like if I want to stop something, I'll just close the door shut. But if I leave the back door a little bit open,
someone can come in.
Then, not just somebody, for me to get out and do what I want to do.
Misery loves company kind of thing too. So if you're wallowing in your addiction, you want your friend who is wallowing in his addiction to come with you.
For fun. So society, or the social aspect of it, is very difficult too, because a lot of people don't want to cut the relationships with their friends.
They still want to be friends. They have good times with those people.
In recovery, 9 times out of 10, you have to.
You have to cut ties with the people you're using with. What can we as parents, teachers, community leaders, what can we do to help alleviate this problem?
This is actually a very good question, because in order for us to have a complete treatment program, or to help our society to attack this problem, we have to have a complete cooperation between the schools, court service unit, the families at home, social services. They all have to cooperate together to be able to attack this problem or this disease. Because if we don't have that, it's going to be open holes here and there and everywhere. So I can't just go and say, well, I'm going to put them in jail because they used more than 3 times. It doesn't work like that.
This is the new laws in the States. There's no treatment. It's automatically in the prison.
But now there is also treatment in the States, in the prison. We go to prison and we give them educational treatment, which is the other piece. In order for you to help the families, you have to educate them about the symptoms. You have to educate them about what do they need to look for in the kids at a certain age. And it's okay if your son or daughter at the age of 11 or 12 and you check if they have any marijuana or not marijuana, you don't ask them. You have to check.
You have to look.
Yes. If they start lying all of a sudden and they didn't used to lie, there is something going on in there, because lying is closely, which is what we call denial, is closely associated with drug and alcohol use. If they have black circles until they are, I mean, there are physical symptoms and emotional symptoms that you need to look for.
Would you discuss the devastating effects that addiction can cause on a family? You know, there used to be this commercial where this lady said, "This is heroin," and it was a bat. And then she'd say, "This is your family this is your family." And and it was all these dishes, and she just started to smash the dishes with this baseball bat. Is this the reality of addiction? Is it like that? Do people become so addicted that they just shatter their family life, shatter everything around their life, shatters around them?
That is true, because remember what we said, that it is a disease, and the person is an organism, and the family is a bigger organism. Every person in this family becomes codependent. They adapt unhealthy ways of dealing with a dependent person, with a chemically dependent person.
They become his enabler, or...
Yes, or a mascot, or, they take different roles, each person in this family. So when it comes to treatment, the family becomes sick itself, and the family needs treatment as well, not just the addicted person.
The whole
The whole
family
family
needs to
needs
undergo treatment.
Because they're going to need to know, I can't take the addict and give him treatment and put him back in his family unit, and he's okay after being not okay for so many years, and they adapted to his way of not being okay. So the whole family needs treatment.
Now is now sick. What is the best way of preventing drug and alcohol abuse? I mean, we as Muslims are taught that we're not supposed to touch khamr, intoxicants at all. So this is obviously the best way. But how can we educate our children that this is the best way? How do we reach this message that to just leave it alone is the best?
Okay.
It's like the best way not to get a sexually transmitted disease is abstinence. The best way not to become an addict is not to drink, is not to take heroin, is to leave it alone. How do we express this message to our youth?
You talk to them. You become close to them. You don't cut them out of your life. You don't become consumed into your work and just leave your kids and give them money and money and money and money, because that's not what family is all about. That's not what raising kids is all about. So you need to pay attention to the children. And this is what we were just talking about.
Shattering the family.
Yeah, it's becoming their friend at that age. And instead of them going out and having different group of friends that are doing things they're not supposed to do, you become their friend.
They turn into the family group for this friendship and this acceptance.
And the main thing that you need to look for is the symptoms, actually. The changes, psychological changes, changes in the school, emotional changes.
Physical changes, change in dress maybe.
Change in the way they conduct their lives.
Like they used to be, really tight, dressed, really, really nice, and then now they're kind of shaggy.
Yes. So that's what you need to look for.
Now, this is part one of a part two, as we know. And the next one we'll be discussing recovery. Could you leave us with a positive thought regarding recovery? I mean, we've just dealt with all this. This is addiction. This is what it does. This is what it is. We don't want to leave people on a downer,
Okay.
So
Well, actually, what we talked about is very brief about the disease of addiction. However, it might have a lot of information in it, and it could be a down information. But there are a lot of people that are treated from it. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about the statistics of the treatment and its successful treatment. So if it is treatable and people have done it, then anyone could do it. The main thing is that they have to want to do it, because nobody's going to be able to help you unless if you want to do it. And believe me, if you want to do it, you will be able to do it.
No one can help you unless you want to help yourself.
Well, you know what? We always say, well, you get what you focus on. So focus on what you want. Because the person who got addicted, that's what they wanted. They focused on that.
They wanted that addiction.
So they can focus on something else, and they will do it. So they have the capability of doing it.
With that, we will close up this episode of Health in Islam. I'd like to thank Dr. Yasser for his time and his patience. As always, it's been a huge pleasure for you to be here with us. I'm Ismail Chartir. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.